Amy, thank you so much for coming on the Mindful Mama podcast.
Thank you, Hunter. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about your new book. You're Happy to Help: Adventures of a People Pleaser, and Happy to Help explores being a people pleaser and a perfectionist. And I checked it out, and a 2022 poll of 1,000 U.S. adults, 56% of women and 42% of men said they describe themselves as people pleasers. And so I think for women, right, like there's a lot more gender role at play. Women are expected to be caretakers and nurturers. And this kind of leads many women to internalize the belief that our worth is tied to the ability to please others, maintain harmony. It's that there's not only just the emotional labor, but all the other labor around it. Do you identify with that? Where did this start with you?
Well, I think that it surprises me, that study, which I've also seen that there's only a 14% difference, because I think women are conditioned to put other people's wants and needs before their own, particularly once we become parents. That's the assignment. And then when you do it and it becomes a struggle, it's given back to you, handed right back to you as proof of your own insufficiency. Well, you're such a people pleaser. And if you weren't such a people pleaser, then you wouldn't have problems.
Ugh.
And so it surprises me actually that 42% of men do identify as it, because I think people pleaser, perfectionist, control freak, a lot of these things are really gendered terms when you stop and think about them. And I think they're the things we women, when they say, hey, wait, this isn't working. And I really started to question that as I went through this book, because the book is all these different times in my life that I stayed too long, tried too hard, didn't give up when I should have given up, applied the wrong lessons of a stick-to-itiveness person who sees things through, and I'm overly reliable. And when the going got tough, I would try to fix something about myself or fix my mindset instead of reversing course or giving up or saying, no, it's not a personality flaw in me that I think this doesn't work. This doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I could see that. And I could definitely see it like being more men than women. You also talked about you grew up Catholic, and I didn't grow up Catholic, but I grew up in a Catholic town, like where so many people are Catholic that there was First Communion parade like down the street, you know?
We didn't have a parade, but I definitely grew up in a town where it was the default mindset.
It was the default.
Like
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think there's like a lot of, I mean, not to throw Catholics or Catholicism under the bus, because there was a lot of great art as well, but like, there's a lot of guilt, right? Kind of associated with doing things right and etc.
Yes, and somebody pointed out to me recently that it was my son actually, who had taken a theology course, that one of the primary differences between Catholicism and Protestantism, it was just this sort of idea that Protestantism, we're talking like Calvinism, like that you were either damned or you weren't, and there wasn't much you could do about it. You were on the good side or the wrong side. And Catholicism is, people call it guilt, but I think it does come out of this idea like, well, you can earn your way out. You can get to the good side, or you can get out of purgatory into heaven, or you can get out of limbo into purgatory. You know, there started to be all these logistical twists of like, you know, layers of heaven. Like, you don't want to say a baby who wasn't baptized went to hell, so she went to limbo. And then you start to think that there's ways you can earn a certain spot by being a super good person, that I think is particularly present for Catholics.
So you could work your way out of it. You could try harder. You could do better.
Yeah. Yeah, and in the best way, you know, like following the example of Jesus and living like Jesus. It means being pretty selfless and putting other people first. And yeah, that's all well and good. But I think even expressed in that, nuns take a vow of poverty and priests generally don't. Nuns take a vow of obedience and most priests do not. And so even within that, the expectations for Catholic male and female religious, the women have been historically sort of second-class citizens.
Yeah, I never understood that, but let's not get too
sidetracked. No, we're getting a little theology weed. Sorry, everybody.
No, that's fine. But yeah, as I mentioned to you, I have to out myself, because in your intro, you describe people, you know, quote, people who ignore the sign-up sheets and who, quote, stay in bed as long as they like in the mornings without wondering if anyone let the dog out. Which, now that I have a 17-year-old and a 14-year-old, That's me on the weekends. Like, I stay in bed as long as I want. I don't worry about letting the dog out at all. So, anyway, I come from the other camp. I
But
hope we can
wait,
still be
so who
friends.
lets the dog out? If you have who lets the dog out in the morning? Like you don't know?
Well, no, no, no. The dog actually will sleep till 10:30 if allowed.
See.
So, and she sleeps with the 14-year-old.
Sometimes my kids have made the mistake of letting the dog out, as in out of their rooms, and then going right back to sleep. And so if I don't like get up to make sure the dog went out, then there's pee on the floor, So,
Oh no. Oh
but
no.
I wondered about people like you, and here you are, that you can walk by a sign up sheet and just be like, nope, not for me, and not wonder who is going to do it if not you, and not feel like you have to justify being busy enough to not do it. You just don't do it.
I just figure somebody who wants to do that will do it. Like it sounds like if somebody who wants to do it will do it. And if I don't want to do it, I'm not.
I've learned there's something in psychology through all the publicity I've been doing for this book called request sensitivity. No, demand sensitivity, it's called.
Yeah,
I
that
guess
might be
that's it.
me.
A request becomes a demand. That I have demand sensitivity. I'm like, yeah, that tracks. That sounds right. That a sign up sheet, I am sensitive to its demands in a way that you are not.
See, it's funny because like I almost get like the rebellious opposite reaction to that where I'm like they're making demands of my time and they're asking me to do things and I get a little like
That sounds amazing.
ornery on the other side.
Wow. That sounds wonderful.
But I think it works in my family because I think my husband is a people pleaser. He and I got really, crabby with the kids when they like leave their banana peels out. I'll leave that banana peel out and won't pick it up for like 2 days. And I'll say, listen, this banana peel is driving me crazy. But my husband will put away all the stuff in the lunchbox, whereas I won't do that. I just will ignore it and let it be their problem.
So, and it's interesting because I think is that people pleasing, I think it's like shorthand for somebody like this, somebody who gets things done. But is the motivation always pleasing other people? Or is it just like, I really like a
Yeah.
tidy surroundings? You can be, you're not always motivated by people pleasing when you're sort of the overly reliable person who gets things done. I'm not saying it always works for you, just that you're not always motivated by, I hope they're not mad at me, which is
Yeah.
when I hear people pleasing, I think sometimes we sort of we paint it all with that brush, and I'm not sure it's that simple.
No, you're right. I think everything is so much more complex than we always try to put
Right.
it into a
Right.
box and yeah, it's all much more complex than that. Okay, but you write about these two Bible characters, Martha and Mary, that frustrated you. And anyway, I didn't know that story because I grew up agnostic in this Catholic town. I didn't know any of the Bible stories. But it's so explained, I was like, "Oh, now I know why they're called Marthas in The Handmaid's Tale." It was like very helpful. But can you tell us about that and what frustrated you?
Yes, yes. So in the New Testament, there's a story when you go to church every week, as I did growing up, you hear the same stories at least every 3 years, you're going to hear the same story. So this is the story of Martha and Mary, sisters. Jesus was in their town preaching, and surprise, surprise, he comes over for dinner with a bunch of his, disciples, his entourage. They all show up at Martha and Mary's house for dinner. They're hanging out in the sort of living room area of the cave. Jesus is holding forth. Mary's hanging out with him and the other, disciples. He's blowing everybody's minds. It's amazing. Martha is burdened with much serving, we're told, and it's that she's making dinner for all these people. And she comes in and she says, Mary, what are you doing? You need to be helping me. You need to be helping me get dinner ready for everybody. And Jesus says, no. Mary, he says, Martha, your mind is burdened with many things, but Mary has the better part, and it will not be taken from her. And that is the end of the story. And what I guess we're supposed to take from that is like, yeah, you're not supposed to worry about what's for dinner all the time. You're supposed to hang out and think about God. Nowhere in that story is Jesus like, Martha, Martha, come in, you sit too. Put it down for a while, right? And
Like, let me send one of these men in to go and do some
we're
of
gonna
the
get
serving.
Pizza. Let's order pizza and let's just all hang out. No, it's just like, Martha, there you go again, worrying about nothing. Also, when is dinner going to be ready exactly? And stop bothering Mary and get back in the kitchen. And so as a kid and as an adult, every time I hear this story, clearly written from a man's point of view, it's like, but what about But what about dinner? Nobody offered to help her. And when she said, I need help, they're like, stop saying that. Get back in the kitchen. And there's no kind of moral I can draw from that except of just outrage on Martha's behalf. Like, poor Martha who had to make dinner for everybody and then was told she was, a real pain when she dared to say, hey, I can't do this by myself. Of course, she wasn't asking any of the men to help either. But you see what I'm saying? It's a very
Yeah.
problematic story. I've always sided with Martha, like, but there would be no dinner if Martha didn't make it. And
No, it
why didn't anybody help her? Why did things stay the same after she complained, even complain. The word complain is such a freighted, weighted, we
mhm.
don't have to take it seriously, right? Martha's wah wah, and you don't have to actually listen or consider whether she might be right.
She's nagging.
She's nagging. Yes, that's the word.
Hate
Yeah,
that. I
yeah.
hate that nagging word. I've felt very sensitive to the idea of like, am I nagging my kids? If someone said I was nagging, or I don't know, I would be pretty, sensitized to
It's
that
another
kind of
gendered
language.
word.
It's
Yeah.
really gendered, and it really is this. It's pointing exactly to that, like to this female that is overly concerned with petty, annoying things and not right, like, and
Yeah.
that's so frustrating because yes, somebody's got to take care of life.
Yes, right, right. It's presumed that she will do that, and then it must not be that hard. And if it is hard, then she's making it harder than it needs to be. Why don't you just relax like Mary? Like, well, I'm sure she'd love to. So you can see I have a head of steam built up about Martha and Mary.
Yeah, I could see that. And now I'm gonna feel guilty if like I'm at a party and I'm like really into a conversation. Someone's like, "Hey, can you need some? I need some help in the kitchen." I'm like wondering, like, would I relate to Mary? Like, would I? Anyway, maybe.
Always jump up and run. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
always the first one to run into
Okay.
the kitchen, but I am sensitive to people working while other people are resting, I guess,
Yeah.
that they're
Yeah.
not
Yeah. Yeah.
jerks
Yeah.
for working. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um. Yeah. You describe a book, Meditations for Women Who Do Too Much, and in this, they talk about this idea of like women who do too much, and you also talk about the idea of a perfectionist, and realizing that men rarely call themselves perfectionists, or you don't hear about men who do too much, right? Like they're just called busy and
Titans of
successful.
industry.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah. So yeah, tell me about that.
So this book, yeah, Meditations for Women Who Do Too Much came out in the 90s. So I was sort of like a young adult when this book came out or in college. And it was in the age of like the Oprah Winfrey show too. And it was the peak age of recovery culture, which was this idea of like this 12-step program, which I think is wonderful and does wonders for people, but it was being really over applied to you eat too much chocolate or like you're a chocoholic or a shopaholic. Everything was recovery. Everybody was an addict to something. Most of us, many things, right? And so this book, Meditations for Women Who Do Too Much, it wasn't meditations for women who have too much to do. It was you do too much. And when I went back and looked at it, every one was a little prayer like, help me understand that it is my own selfish need to be busy that is making my to-do list so long and making life so unpleasant for people around me. And it was really written by a woman, but it was definitely from this point of view of fix my broken need to have to do stuff all the time. I remember sort of that sort of idea, like stop being addicted to having problems and then you won't have problems, right? Stop making things harder than they need to be and your problems will resolve. Well, guess what? That doesn't always apply, especially when you get older and your problems become realer problems. But it was another sort of thing that I labored through in the 90s that like you, with your mindset, you could set a course for your life. And if your life wasn't working out the way you wanted it, it was just because you weren't manifesting it correctly. Stop wanting bad things to happen.
So did you feel guilty for your busyness?
Yeah. You try to conquer it by like being more productive, so you'll be less busy. You try to
Does that
conquer
work?
it. No, no. The more you do, it's like Lucy at the chocolate factory, right? You do it and they say speed it up and all of a sudden you're getting more stuff. No, the Oliver Berkman says that in 4,000 weeks that getting better at getting things done just seems to lead to you getting more things to do. Right, so working faster, isn't it? Getting a sense of humor. I talk about that in the book. Like your mindset, maybe it wouldn't bother you that nobody around the house ever does anything but you if you didn't let it bother you. That was a very like 70s approach that I saw my mom sort of grapple with, like just roll your eyes and laugh. And even today, like to now, there's so much really good Instagram content circling like it's so funny that the guy doesn't have any idea what his daughter's classmates' names are. Like that's not funny at all. It's like, well, that's true, but I think a lot of us sort of consume that content. Yeah, you're right. It is unfair. We do have more of the work to do as a but it's an end to itself. We don't actually
Mm.
try to change the situations that we're in. We just build up a head of steam on Instagram and then go do everything.
No, that sounds like
That's not quite it.
Not the best answer for this.
Right.
I mean, it's interesting because so like as someone from the other camp, I do feel like I find myself, thinking like, well, yeah, like this, I mean, to me that would be unacceptable if everybody like and that of course it's happened to me as a mom in a family of four that like things just fall on me, but to me I'm like, no, like you have to help. This is too much. I need you to help with this. I need you to help with this. I am unhappy and I'm letting you know. And then I don't know, we're having the conversation, I guess. And I remember having
really good. Yeah,
the conversation about like doctor's appointments. Like at some point it was like because I was staying home with the kids, and then I transitioned to me doing my own business, and then I was still doing every single sort of doctor appointment. I was like, I am doing all of this like administrative stuff that I am bad at. You need to take on some appointments or school contact or something. Like we have to figure out which of these you're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely did that. I wrote a book about redistributing the workload instead of changing our mindsets, and then I had to redistribute the workload in order to write a book about just that. So I certainly put some of these ideas into practice. And having my kids were all in high school, and I guess one in college when I started doing this. And, when I was like, everybody has to do more around here, I think that their first reaction was to be not just disincentivized, but truly baffled by, you guys have no idea how much I do. No, they have no idea how much you do, particularly if you are this happy helper who, like me, had integrated these lessons that you get a lot done, you whistle while you work, you're pleasant while you do it, and you make it seem not hard. That those are all sort of part of the assignment of being a good mom and wife and happy helper in the world. And so I think when once in a while I'd be like, I can't take it anymore, that nobody knew what I was talking about. They were just sort of like, what's she doing? And getting much more specific about what needed to be done. And asking again and somebody saying, sure, I'll take over the healthcare submissions, and then not doing it. It's not perfect. And change is possible, and change has definitely happened in my own house. But it wasn't that all I had to do was stop having excessively high standards and everything was fine. No, all I had to do was stop having excessively high standards and ask again and then pick up the thing that somebody dropped and decide we're not sending holiday cards this year or whatever it is. Things don't magically get picked up by somebody else when you decide you're not going to do them anymore. And it's sometimes about getting okay with that instead of waiting for somebody to take over.
Yeah. I have to apologize to everyone who does send me a holiday card. I really appreciate them. I like getting them. I'm sorry you never get one from me, but I love you anyway.
It's like it's kin keeping, right? That there was a study about kin keeping and how often that work gets done by women, and because it's work that's done by women, it's sort of seen from the outside like, oh, there she goes again, spending a lot of money on holiday cards, but they are
it's important work. I'm
sad.
What
your cousins' names are because right, and your cousins' kids' names, and that this one goes to this college because of those holiday cards.
Yeah. No, I'm sad that I can't get it. I'm not organized enough to do. I mean, I could do it, but I'm just like, I haven't done it for so many years that now I'm just, I don't know. Maybe when my kids go to school, college.
My podcast co-host calls that the law of holiday attrition, that once you stop doing it, you should not pick it back up.
Yeah.
Let it work in your favor.
Okay.
Right. Do not pick that back up.
You had a big takeaway at an Al-Anon meeting related to the ideas of this idea of codependence. And I think it's interesting because that has recently become a little bit more of a hot button word. And you wrote that you recognize in yourself, the compulsion to control, the caretaking of others' needs in order to feel worthy. So tell us about that, because I know many, many listeners can relate.
Well, it's another thing that I think is like, it is true and it can get over applied, like when you're stressing about your high school junior's course load, I don't think you have to read a book about being a high functioning codependent. I don't think that's really what is going to lead to a solution that works for everybody. But when you're dealing with addiction, of course it is. So what it really was is when I walked into the 12-step meeting and encountered these ideas being applied to addiction, which is the perfect storm of you can't help somebody else. You want to, you think you should. The world is probably telling you should, and you still have to let go, and dwell in the hope, but the uncertainty. And when I got there, I was like, now I get it. It wasn't about you're addicted to chocolate. It was a perfect application of these ideas that I think has sort of seeped out and been over applied to everything. But those ideas are very, very powerful. What I had to learn in my own life is I think I thought that saving the people I loved most, like my kids, from any sort of pain or disappointment would be how I showed them that I loved them and that I needed to do that. And of course, you shouldn't do that. You don't need to do that. And when the people I love the most have been suffering, there was no part of them that's like, why isn't Amy doing something about this? Like, they were never assigning me that task anyway. But I really thought I could sort of forever fix the lives of people around me. And I don't mean the barista. I mean, like, the ones who are very close to me. And then I realized you can't even do that. I'm not trying to people please the bus driver. I'm trying to people please with my husband or whatever. You can't even do that. You're not responsible for their happiness or sadness. Your job is to sit with them. Their job is to sit with you in those moments of uncertainty. And figuring that out was really hard for me, but that got me further. Again, you didn't have to hand off the baton to somebody else who could solve the problem. You didn't have to ensure that they would solve their own problem. In the case of addiction, you just have to coexist. You just have to breathe together.
Be present, be there.
Yeah, be present.
Be there.
Yeah,
I'm here with you. And I think that for anyone who's listening, if you have little kids, like, this is a great lesson to learn when they're young,
Yes.
like that your job is not to fix their upset feelings. Your job is you don't have to fix that. You don't have to solve their every problem, and that your job really is to be present, sit there with them and be there with them when they have these feelings, because it's an inevitable part of being human, is that these things will be there and we will have to feel these things, right? And that's
yeah. My kids I have 2 in college and 1 in high school, and so we always talk on What Fresh Hell about the sort of perspective of where the older sister is telling you it's going to be okay. And what I really have internalized is this idea that when your kids go to college, it's not that you have bubble wrapped them or downloaded all the programs. If this goes wrong, you know what to do. If this goes wrong, you know what to do. It's so that they'll be ready for things to go wrong, so that they'll be ready to be disappointed and to fail, that they will have had experience in those areas, so that a C in a college course isn't the first time that everything hasn't gone exactly their way. Your job is to make sure that doesn't happen, not to make sure they won't have a C in college.
Yeah, your job is to make sure that they fail sometimes before they get there. Just not to make sure that it happens, but just to allow that to happen, because it's going to happen. That's part of life. Like, to have that friend, you will make that mistake and say the wrong thing. It makes all your friends mad at you, and you have to learn that, right? Like, you have to, I don't know, all of those different things that we can't just protect them from.
That's right. That's right. And with older kids, learning too, that when they aren't suffering, that you just say, that sounds hard. And not, why don't you say this? Or why don't you just call them back and say that you don't offer the solution unless specifically asked. Good advice for everybody, but certainly for older kids. Surprise, those problems get solved.
You had a profound experience that tested both your ability to let things go and to be organized around things. Your daughter had a CRPS diagnosis, and my daughter struggles also with a nervous system disorder, amplified musculoskeletal pain syndrome, and I know a little bit about CRPS because I watched that documentary about. God, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah,
but we'll remember the name at some point, but it's such an acute experience of helplessness, of letting go. Like, you can't fix it. You can't. And you have to, your kid being in pain.
Yeah. Although that chapter starts with me in the hospital and the doctor saying, like, well, there's nothing more we can do here. It's up to you, Mom. And my kid was in excruciating pain. They just were like, no, it's up to you. This is CRPS, and we're gonna have to retrain her, and it's gonna take a while, and like, good luck. And here's a pain doctor you couldn't call, and it was like an 8-week waiting list, and you really are sometimes handed. This is what I mean. The book isn't like, and you imagine you have to solve this problem and you don't. Like, no, I was quite
Yeah, you were
explicitly being
told.
handed my fourth graders intense, excruciating pain as mine to handle. And I had no idea what I was doing. And of course, I had to make sure she didn't know that I was despondent and terrified. I had to put on a good face for her. So that's when this happy helper stuff is useful. Sometimes you do
Mm-hmm.
need to pretend like you have it
Mm-hmm.
all together, even when you don't. And then eventually, yes, the lesson was the way to solve CRPS without getting into too much detail is like you have an actual injury. When you close your finger in a door, it hurts like the dickens for 10 seconds and then it quickly subsides. And when you have CRPS, for whatever reason, that doesn't shut off. It's like the sprinklers are stuck on and nobody can shut them off. So the pain signal just goes and goes and goes and amplifies. Even though, in this case, it was her ankle was sound. It was not fractured. I mean, she like twisted it a little bit, but there's nothing wrong with it. But it felt like it was like amputated. It hurt so much. And the only way around that is to very, very slowly teach the
Mm-hmm.
brain that they can shut off the alarm system, that there is no actual injury. And it takes months. Sometimes it takes years. Sometimes it never works. And just like she slowly had her teach her brain a little bit at a time that it was okay to put a little bit of weight on the ankle. It was okay to let somebody touch it first. I, in the same way, had to learn, like, it's okay to not think about this for 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to not think about this for an hour. It's okay to not think about this for an afternoon, and slowly back off from it. It's tough lessons.
Yeah, it's incredibly hard because it's like the thing that hurts most is the thing that they have to do.
Yeah. Right. And you have to make them use the painful limb in order to teach the brain it's okay. That's right.
When my daughter was diagnosed with AMPS, like she was 14, and I couldn't make her do it. Like I couldn't. I didn't know at that point. I was like, um, do I employ all? She didn't want to do the things. She was supposed to do 45 minutes of cardio a
Oh my
day.
gosh. And it would hurt. Imagine
Incredible pain,
10 out of
right?
10 pain. Yeah.
And she couldn't do it, and I couldn't make her do it. I had to really wrestle with that. I had to look at, like, okay, do I go against everything like I've learned and I teach and use rewards and punishment? Do I sacrifice my relationship with her and make her hate me to make her body better? Like, I had to, like, figure that out, and I couldn't do that. And I don't know if that was the right decision, but I couldn't do that. And I had to be on her side and be her coach. And she's is getting better on her own, but yeah, takes years. She still deals with it. So, but she is now, about to turn 18, and she can go on a long walk, and she can go rock climbing, and she's training, filling a backpack with 15 pounds to go hiking.
Wow.
So, but it's impossible sometimes the things asked of us. I got really annoyed for you too, be that the doctor just pulled you aside. Like, why didn't he just talk to you all as a family? Everybody needed to
Yeah.
know this.
Everybody needed to know this, right? The doctor pulled me aside, took me to like the little like room with the toys and crayons that no kid ever goes in at the hospital to say, it's up to you, Mom. Right. And my husband was with me at the hospital. Maybe he thought that my husband should stay with
Yeah.
my child, and maybe it never occurred to him, like, of course the mom's going to be doing this work. And I certainly thought so. I did not pause a conversation and say, well, wait a minute, let me get my parenting partner here. I was like, that's right, it's up to me. I'm super mom. I can do this. I will make her well. I will get her walking, and even though I had no idea how to do it. And yeah, we take on these assignments, right? And that's why it's not as simple as, like, people need to understand that it's not fair to women. Like, we participate in these things, right? We think it really is up to us and only us because the world tells us that it is. Not because we're making it up, but we don't push back. It doesn't occur to us to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, do you buy into the stereotype that women are naturally better multitaskers?
No, I don't. I did a lot of research for the book on multitasking because when I started writing this book, I thought, okay, I have to do a chapter on multitasking because there is this thing that our brains are different and women's brains are can do more than one thing at a time and men can't. That's not true. And when you really go back and look at the research and the studies, that's not what they say. but the headlines just were like, women's and men's brains are totally different. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Women can multitask. Women are better at noticing mess. There was a real, I guess it's probably 15 or 20 years now, a lot of studies about that. Like women's and men's brains are so different. And now it's sort of coming back around with a lot of female scientists doing studies like, that's not true at all. So here I was doing 3 and 4 things at a time and being no better at it than anybody else. It's taxing my mental faculties just as much as any male brain, and me thinking that I was uniquely able to do this. And so there must be something wrong with me that it was so hard.
No, lovely. I mean, I have to say for the listener, Happy to Help is not a self-help book. It's a series of essays. And I think if somebody is a people pleaser, they're going to really feel seen and really feel heard and things like that. But have you come to solutions for yourself, seeing, kind of looking at writing, examining, looking at these places where you've stepped up and said, give me that sign up list? Like, have you come to anything to help yourself have more ease and space in your life and over the years?
I've thought about some ways to tell when you need to help and when you don't, and when you need to maybe stop doing something. And I think when you think of an obligation that you have, and your primary emotional feeling about it is resentment or dread at the idea of calling the head of the PA up to say you're not going to be able to do that thing this year or whatever. If the primary reason to continue to do something is that I really don't want to have to say I can't do it, then that's something you have to look at. Or if your primary feeling is resentment, then that's something you have to look at. But for me, all through my life, I think I drew a lot of identity from helping other people. And I wasn't secretly seething that they didn't see my true value. Like they did. They're like, you're just so amazing. And I think I overlearned the lesson that I must be so good at it if people keep giving me more to do. And so I guess I'm supposed to keep doing it. And that when I had too much to do and I felt overwhelmed, I thought, okay, there must be something wrong with me, that I feel like I can't handle this because I so clearly can. So maybe I just haven't tried hard enough. And one of the final examples of the book, dealing with addiction, I did work with an addiction counselor at one point from this Al-Anon point of view, who was trying to get me to see that I could change the life of somebody else, that I was wrong, that it was up to me and I could do it if I only tried harder. And yeah, there was a big part of me that's like, wait a minute, did I get that wrong? And it was immediately like, maybe there is one more book I can read, one more thing I can try. And I was able to resist that because that's not the right thing for that person to be saying. But it almost got me because it made so much sense. Like, that's right. If I just try a little harder, there might be hope yet. And very false, very, very damaging, and completely unrelated to what the person that we were talking about needed from me in actuality. P.S. Right? It was all a story. Just because we decide we don't want to take on too many things anymore doesn't mean that people aren't going to stop asking us to take on more than we can or should do. They're not going to stop asking. So it's up to us to say, that doesn't make sense. That does. This, I don't have a choice. This, I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, well, there is that societal pressure. I mean, it's similar to, in some ways, like, there's societal pressure to, like, when your kids are little, to like take the swim class and the tumbling class, and you can't miss the music together class. There's all these there's pressures to enroll your kids in a lot of different things. And some of us do enroll our kids in a lot of things, and some of us resist that pressure, right? Like, could say, no, it's healthier for my kid not to be enrolled in all these things. And like, in some ways, like being a caretaker, to try to be a caretaker of ourselves first, right, is to like be the mom of you, and to like not overburden you and put you in too many activities, kind of thing.
That's right. I mean, if I saw my friends going through what they were, what I had gone through, I was watching another person go through, like, their kid has CRPS, there would be no part of me that was like, why haven't they figured this out yet? Why isn't their kid better yet? Right? I just would think, this person is a superhero. She's amazing, and she just needs support. And wow, I can't believe how strong she is. Or, I can't believe how much help she needs, and let me go, bring a lasagna over. But I wouldn't be like, why hasn't she figured this out yet? And so why are you so hard on yourself when you can give that grace to anybody else?
And there's definitely that worthiness thing, right? Like, we have to figure out how to remind ourselves, that we're worthy without, I don't know, like there's,
Yes. We're worthy when we're unsure. I say that like in the
yeah,
last paragraph of the book. I'm worthy when I'm unsure, when I don't know what's supposed to happen next. I'm still worthy. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think that's so important. Like, I don't know. I put myself in the other camp, but I was one of those people who got all the good grades and,
Mm-hmm.
did all the like could do do things well and get to get all those college grades and blah blah blah. But I've been in a place recently where I've been in a place of like indecision and indecisiveness, and I've been trying to give myself some space to figure it out and not just dive forward into what is next. And it's so interesting when I have given myself this space and then literally my schedule opened up, my space opened up, and the feeling of like, okay, well, when we're not busy, we do have to think about like, in some ways, like there's this question of like being on purpose. Like, what is that? What is it that
Mm.
makes us feel that sense of purpose? And the work I do, like with raising good humans and things like that, really, really does that for me. But then, it's funny how quickly, like, if you're not like busy doing the things, that the questions of worthiness, I think, do come up, right? Like maybe busyness is a way to kind of push that aside.
Yeah, that you're showing your capability. That's how you're showing people how much you love them, by how much you do for them, by removing sorrow and pain from their lives, which again, nobody asked me to do that, but somehow I thought that was my job. You're worthy when you're still. You're worthy when you're the one who needs help. You're worthy when you have no idea what's going to happen now, that you're still worthy.
Yeah, I guess that's just, we need to remind ourselves that.
Mhm.
We need to remind each other that.
Mhm.
Do you have any final words of advice for other moms who are
Well,
people pleasing? How can they make a change and be a little less overwhelmed?
I do want to make a plug for this book because we've had a wonderful conversation, but it sounds like and it's a very serious conversation. And obviously, these
Mm.
are topics I take
Hmm.
seriously. But this book is a funny book. This book
Oh, yeah.
starts with me like making a fool of myself in eighth grade, and like I have over applied the I have to fix everything lessons throughout my life, and most of the stories in this book are, I think, relatable and funny and won't make you sad. But I hope it make you feel like fellow traveler, like, oh, this person, I've been this person. She sees me, she gets me, and I get her.
Yeah. I will vouch for that. Yeah, we've had a serious conversation, but there's definitely a lot of humor in that. So they should read the book and they should feel seen and heard. Any other
Yeah.
advice?
Yeah, that's it. That's
That's
it.
it.
Speak up. Say you need help and then say it again. Don't when you say I need help and nobody helps, don't be like I knew this wouldn't work. Say like, excuse me, clear
Mm.
your throat and say it again.
Yeah, you guys need to hear me. Yeah.
Yeah,
This isn't working, right? My
that's right.
needs aren't
This
being
isn't
met.
working. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Well, Amy, it's such a pleasure to talk to you. You can get Happy to Help: Adventures of a People Pleaser, essays by Amy Wilson, anywhere books are sold. And this has been a pleasure. I love talking to you and connecting, and I'm so psyched for you for this new book.
I'm delighted too. Thank you, Hunter.
Thanks for being here.